Welcome to another edition of the Resilient Living Podcast, a show dedicated to improving quality of life for both people and planet through liberation and independence, moving from surviving to thriving and living life on your own terms. I want to bring you guys in today to my biodegradable container gardening. This is an intro to what I've been working on for the past couple years, and I think it's something really juicy, something really good for you guys, and it's a whole different way of producing your food from a vegetable gardening aspect. And I bet anything you've ever heard, and I've simplified it. We're going to talk about all of the different qualities and the uses for it, and I'm going to grow my food for the rest of my life utilizing biodegradable container gardening techniques. So today we're going to brush over and give you the intro of why, where, and all of that kind of stuff. So let's get into it. Well, if you think that you have had problems, let's just jump into it, I guess. Wow, I'm just bumbling over myself over here. Give my own self chance to speak. If you think that you have a brown thumb, a black thumb, or whatever, you don't have a green thumb, it's nothing you've done. There's many people out there doing the same thing, and that's what I've been working on. Maybe you did find yourself where you had a semi-green thumb, right? And you were like, great, I started planting stuff, and it all got eaten by bugs or birds or animals or something, diseases and stuff like that. Well, I've been working on solving that problem for you. If you don't think you have the time or the space, I don't have the space, and I can't really do much with my little backyard. It's all concrete, or my landlord won't let me dig it up, or I own the land. I just don't really want to sink a shovel in the ground because my back hurts. I got you covered. You guys really need to. I'm spilling my beans here today, and I hope I'm not making a mistake doing this, but I feel in a very giving mode, and I just want to share what I've got going on for you guys. So this is completely simplified, as I said. What does it accomplish? There's many things. I'm going to try to condense this in less than 30 minutes if I can. This accomplishes many things. I set out to grow something, first of all, that's non-toxic. And I wanted to do something where I don't have to work so hard, because actually I did it because I'm lazy. What does it accomplish? It accomplishes where you don't have to work so hard. You don't have to kill anything. One of the secrets that I've done is I use an old beehive, a beekeeper's technique, where we actually raise our garden up off the ground in our containers so they never have contact with the ground. And in between that space from the ground and where our containers are sitting on, the ants and slugs and stuff like that, mice will try to climb up. And what will happen is that the slugs and any kind of insects will have to pass through a layer of axle grease. And this is very stinky to them. It dirties them up. They do not like it. Now, mice, we have, on the other hand, will cross that barrier if they can get their claws into it. What we had to do with that is we had to actually get some aluminum skirting, which you see on trees a lot, or you know how they'll do like this coating, this painting on there, so it makes it where their claws, it's slippery. They can't really climb up and get a grip. So what I have done is raise these gardens, these containers, and place them on wooden pallets, which are completely recyclable, and that I've repurposed. And I've laid them on top of cinder blocks. Underneath the cinder blocks, we have some gravel, because I'm doing fairly large operations of 10 by 4 feet, producing about 27 to 30 plants, I believe it was, per pallet. So there's a lot of weight. Well, what happens when the mice try to go from that ground and climb up to the over the cinder blocks, they hit the aluminum skirting that goes around the edge, and they slip off and they can't really make their way in. So now we've solved the problem with anything on the ground coming into our garden. And the premise of all of this is that I wanted to grow something, my food, in a sustainable, resilient way, and non-toxic, but I also wanted to make it, is there a way that I could do it where I don't have to kill anything? And so far what we're basically doing, the premise is, you can look, but you can't touch. Right? Like most of the younger girls when I was at school, you know. But the ants and the slugs and everything, they're just barricaded and blocked off from having entryway. So they have to go back to their natural state and eat whatever they can find on the ground and forage the way they were meant to do, not to come after my wonderful, yummy food. So the other problem that we ran into was that we had squirrels, and we had rabbits, and we have birds that would literally come in and eat my tomatoes and things like that. Lots of flying insects and other animals that were gaining access from the top area. So what we had to do is, now we put our stuff on the pallet, we got it elevated off the floor. Now what we had to do is we had to cover this thing. And at first I covered it with bird netting, with about 1-inch bird netting. And this stopped the birds from coming in. It allowed some of the small birds, I don't know how, to get in there and start actually eating the insects and stuff that started invading my garden, my suspended garden here. So what I recently have done, we've solved that problem, but now we have aphid infestations, and we have cabbage moth, which some people call cabbage maggot. These guys are coming in and they're laying their eggs, and they're very tiny, very tiny. And the aphids have come and destroyed a lot of my food, so we had to wrap that in a sort of thing called pantyhose. Well, not called pantyhose. It's called the ag cloth, and it's got a covering, basically like pantyhose. So now that the insects can't get in, everything's completely covered. We've diverted them from entering, even down from aphids all the way to birds, skunks, rabbits, everything. It's completely sectored off away from their ability to attain eating them. So now this is the part where we get into where it's not biodegradable. You wouldn't have to do this thing if you were somebody who wasn't so busy and working so hard. You can actually go out there and handpick tomato hornworms and stuff like that. Maybe spray soapy waters and use neem oil and things like that to maintain these sort of things. But given that the majority of people are so busy, I've been trying to invent a way, and successfully done so, of the way people could do it even in a busy schedule like myself. So it is 100% biodegradable without the cloth, the ag cloth going around the top, and without automated water, which we're going to talk about. So if you took this thing and what it accomplishes, if you took this thing and just left it alone and you watered with a watering can, or a hose, the only thing that would be left in probably about 20 years, 30 years would be the rubber hose that you use to water the plants. Otherwise, there'd be this giant pile of fertile soil, and there'd be a couple cinder blocks. Maybe if they didn't decompose, they'd be standing on the outskirts, on this weird formation, and they would go, what the heck is going on around here? So it accomplishes many, many things. It also accomplishes all the runoff that comes off from having a suspended garden over the ground. Now, what I have done is I've covered the ground with wood chips, and all the excess, like right now it is raining here in San Diego, California, where I live. My farm is in a location, I'm spin farming on land I don't own. It's about a 15-minute drive from here. But what's happening right now is any of the juices from the worm castings in the soil are dripping from the baskets onto the ground on top of these wood chips, which are soaking in past the wood chips and into the ground and doing what? Repairing the earth. So in about 3 to 5 years from now, if I was to remove the pallet and the cinder blocks and all my gardening, and I opened that area up and moved the decaying wood chips, there would be this fertile land where I wouldn't even have to till, do nothing. There would be worms in it and everything, food, microbiology, everything going on. So it's leaving the earth better than the way we found it. So yes, there is a couple of things that maybe we need to do where we use of plastics, but it's very, very minimal, and we're working on that as well. One of the solutions to not have to have anything is to do the podcast you guys should listen to with Joseph Lofthouse on land racing. Let's breed plants that are not so susceptible to aphids and birds and deer and everything else that we don't have to do anything to, but that's a long making right now, and I don't think a lot of people have the time to do that. So somebody needs to do something to get people growing their own food, and that is what I've been working on, and that's what I'm sharing with you guys today. So I kind of went over on my notes here of why it's used. It's used basically to feed ourselves and to repair the earth, and to actually produce something, to get people, I think, inspired that you can grow your own food. There are ways to do it. You just haven't found them until now. Now, who it's for and why it's used, I think, on here is a lot of people who are renters, I think, poor people. That's kind of who I really want to help. I want to help everybody, but specifically people who are struggling and need to grow their own food. Your landlord's not going to really want you to be digging stuff up, most likely in the front yard or the backyard, moving soil around and doing things. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But why would you go through all that trouble of labor and time and actually money of building your own fertilizers or buying them and mixing all that up in the soil and actually having to turn the soil over and all that, when you can just container garden And the significance of this, I'm going to show you guys how to make these biodegradable containers, how to mix the soil and all that. But the significance is the return on investment as well. The significance is you're going to have that soil for a very long time. You can keep reusing it. We're going to talk about that mixture coming up soon. So that it's used for people who can literally take their garden with them if they needed to move. It's also used for people who say want to do the land race gardening, where you want to separate your plants. Once they go to flower, you don't want to put two brassicas or a bell pepper and jalapeno together. You're going to end up getting a very strong flavored, we'll say hot bell pepper. They're going to cross pollinate. So what you could do with your plant, once you've harvested all your veggies and stuff off of it, like your jalapeno and your bell pepper, is you could separate them. Maybe you could take that one container and put it in the front yard and separate the two. That way the pollination on the new flowers that happens on the jalapeno, it's going to stay true to a jalapeno instead of mixing with the bell pepper, which is in your backyard. This gives you exchange. This gives you mobility for many, many, many things. All right, so yeah, it's who it's used for, why it's used. There's so much here, I don't even have the time to explain it. So it's best suited, yes, for people who are renting, and it's best suited really for everybody. I just don't have the time to go in all the details on it. When will it be available? I have a full-time job, guys. Those of you following the show, I own my own construction company, and I am working like a dog. And it is raining right now. That's why there's no background noise, and you guys are getting a good quality show today, and it feels so good to not be concentrating on driving and paying attention to where I have to go on the exits and everything, and just giving you guys my full attention. I have to say it's really lovely, and I would love the show to go on this way forever. But when will the baskets and all this stuff I'm about to teach you how to make be available? Well, if you can figure out what I'm telling you here today, they're available today. That's if you could find them with the supply chain disruption. All right, so, but I am looking to sell them as well. If you guys are interested in something like that and you believe in the work that I'm doing, you can go to biodegradablecontainergardening.com. We have a YouTube channel, Biodegradable Container Gardening. We have a TikTok. We have a Instagram. BC. We have a Facebook page. BC. San Diego BC Gardening is the private Facebook group, and I show you guys tours and stuff of how everything's growing, what I'm growing, how it's all looking, and all those kind of things. So feel free to dip in and check out those things. But I am working on selling actually the baskets, so they will be for sale soon. I just need to get inquiries, and I need to know from you guys how much you'd be willing to pay or what you guys want. You guys might want to subscribe and do all that and get a hold of me, because I'm thinking the first 5 people that do so, I'm going to actually send them a basket for free. That way I can promote it, they can take a look, and I have full confidence that once you start utilizing these things, you're probably going to want to start going larger scale, and guess what? You're probably going to want to purchase them. So that's the key right there. All right, so let's talk about how do you, what is the whole thing? What does it look like? Well, what we have is a 8-inch tall basket by 1 foot wide on the bottom. We want a perfect square foot, and that's very important, and we're going to talk about why. The fencing just happens to come in 2 by 4 foot slats. This is the critter fencing. This is a little wire welded fencing that you'll find at any hardware store. I do recommend that you go with the red brand instead of the Everbuilt, which they sell at Home Depot. Seems to be a little better quality. Before you purchase the baskets, you might want to flex it, pull on the wires, the welds, and just see if anything snaps off. Most hardware stores will return them, though, if it comes to the point where they broke. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to cut yourself, which looks like the sign of the Red Cross for the hospitals. You're going to cut yourself across. You're going to have at the bottom of the base is going to be 1 foot by 1 foot square. Being it's 2 inches by 4 inches, that's pretty easy. You're going to leave 3 2 by 4 inch squares along the length, and then you're going to count the 2 inch. That equals about a foot, so about a foot in the center. That's what you want, a perfect foot. Well, the ears, as we'll call it, the ends, you're going to want to cut those no more than 8 inches flush on each end to create yourself a square basket. Leave yourself some hanging wires on the ends so you guys can wrap these together. I mean, visually this is best to do on, I think, for video to explain how to do it. But if you can get this gist, you can go ahead and start doing this now. So you're going to fold these all up into nice little squares. You're going to use those loose wires on the end to wrap around to hold everything together. And now you have yourself a perfect 1 foot by 1 foot square basket that's about 8 inches high. Now, it just so happens to be that this wire basket will hold exactly 5 gallons of soil. Why is that significant? Because 5 gallons is pretty much the magic number, not to grow stuff really good, but you can grow stuff. You can grow a tomato, and you're going to get some decent tomatoes. Now, if you put that tomato bush in a 10 or a 15 or a 20 gallon container, you'd probably get a lot more productivity, but it's a lot heavier and a lot more labor intense to do. Why not just grow a whole bunch of tomatoes, and you get a lot easier mobility and things like that, picking them up and restarting. So now we have the wire basket. That's like the bones of the biodegradable container gardening system. That's kind of what holds everything together. Well, we have these giant 2x4 squares that the soil could fall out of. We need to stop that. What are we going to do? And how are we going to make this biodegradable? We're going to use jute burlap sacks. Jute plant actually is something that is sustainable because it can't be grown with irrigation water. It has to grow with rainwater. It's just an amazing plant. It grows in abundance. It's right up there with hemp. It was called the golden plant, I believe, something like that. It was very, very valuable in the old days because of the intense fibers that it has. It has a certain amount of UV protectant in it. It leaves the ground better than the way it found it. When you plant jute plant, it actually shoots nitrogen and stuff in the soil and actually remineralizes the soil. So when you remove the plant from harvest, you actually have stuff that's already preset that the jute plant did for you. But that's all fine and dandy. What we need it for us is we need burlap tarps is what I actually use. They're a 7x7 foot tarp. You can find these at a lot of your landscape places. You want to make sure that you have real jute burlap. The way to find this out is get yourself a piece and light it on fire with a lighter. Do this in your fireplace. And if it melts, if it lights on fire and melts, and you can tell the difference, it leaves this residual gummy stuff behind. It's got probably polyester or some sort of plastic in it. True jute is a plant just like palm branch or something. When you light it on fire, a little piece, it'll just go up and turn into complete ash you can rub in your fingers. So what we're going to do is we're going to get that 7x7 foot sheet. I buy these in bulk. I get them very cheap. And you're going to cut yourself lengths of 4 foot 6 inches in length. The way I do it is I lay it on a table, and a very long table, and I run myself a chalk line that runs an exact foot, 1 foot in diameter. I get about 6, I believe, out of the 7 foot tarp because it's 6 foot something. It's just a few inches shy. I think like 6 foot 8 by 6 foot 8. So I chalk my lines 1 foot long. And then I chop these things, these burlap tarps at 1 foot lengths around the whole edge. Then after that's done, after all of those are done, I lay them on the table and I measure out about a 4 foot and a half, 4 foot 6 inches, and I chop that off. So now I'm left with a 1 foot wide by 4.5 feet long wrap of burlap. On the ends, which we have left, will give you actually 2 perfectly square foot burlap squares. You want to cut that directly in half, and now you're left with 2 1 by 1 foot squares, which work perfectly. Now we're going to take that 1 foot by 1 foot square, one of those pieces of burlap that we cut, we're going to set that on the 1 by 1 foot square wire basket that we have at the bottom. Now we're going to take the 4 by 6 inch, and we're going to wrap that around the whole entire perimeter, leaving a concave, leaving some lap over the 1 foot piece on the bottom so that the soil doesn't spill out the bottom corners. What we're going to do, I take safety pins or some metal clamps and I clamp them on each corner of the basket, and then I start to fill it up with my soil and I kind of compact it in there. Many things I said I can't fit all in this one video, but that's your liner. And your liner for me at this point right here is about 60 cents every time you want to grow something. It's about 10 cents a square foot. If you look at growing something for a year, well, we'll talk about ROIs, I guess. But yeah, you're going to take that 1 foot, you got everything lined up. Now you're going to fill this thing with soil, which we're going to talk about, but you're going to take that last piece that you just had, that second 1 by 1 foot by 1 foot square, you're going to place it on top of your basket, and that's going to shield it as a mulch from the sun drying everything out and from seeds getting in. And what you can do is take some scissors and cut some little holes, which we're going to get into the planting grid, and that's where you can start inserting your plants. And this is going to work like mulch. So you got it from the bottom, you have a perfectly wrapped cube, which ends up in a 5-gallon container. Okay, so next is your soil mixture. Very simple. Now, there is some debate about sustainability with peat moss and all that. I think anything manufactured, but everything is pretty much manufactured. If you're going to, unless you're growing your own compost and you have your own worm bins and you're collecting vegetation from, say, a restaurant and stuff like that, food scraps, to actually create your own soil, which still had to come from diesel trucks and everything to deliver them. So it's debatable on sustainability as far as harvesting such things as the peat moss, which are taken from peat bogs back in Canada or other places. But from what the peat people say, I don't want to get too much into this, is that they are doing it sustainable in that it's actually they're harvesting way less than is being produced. I don't know the facts on it, but I do know that a lot of things, if we're going to go on the sustainable wagon, there's a lot of things done in this world that are way worse than taking peat moss from a place, like cutting down trees and stuff like that. I mean, the list just goes on and on. It's like you have to pick one, right? Nothing's perfect. We didn't get here overnight, but we're not going to get out of here overnight either. It's going to take some work. So the amount that I would say of purchasing peat moss to rehabilitate land and to stop all the fossil fuels and stuff, or reduce them from coming in, is far less impact than getting yourself some peat moss from the bogs, in my opinion anyways. Of course, this thing can go everywhere. But the mixture of the soil, to move on forward, is that you're going to do, I made this very simple, 1 part peat moss, 1 part vermiculite, and 1 part compost of your choice. I prefer worm castings for various reasons. But you're going to mix all these 3 together. And the simplest way to do this is get yourself a tarp, a wheelbarrow. What I do is I take a 5-gallon bucket and I fill it to the top with peat moss. I loosen it all up and get it all the twigs and everything out, and I dump that on a tarp. Equally with a 5-gallon bucket of vermiculite. Fill that up, level it off, dump it. Equally with your compost, level it off, dump all those 3 together. See how easy that is? Now you're going to mix those all up together inside of a bag, or in your wheelbarrow, or in your tarp. For me, with one person, what you do is you drag one end over. You don't dump the soil on the ground. You just keep lifting up one end and the other end, and moving back and forth until it all gets mixed up. This is actually, I got to give credit where credit's due. This is where Mel Bartholomew's Square Foot Gardening came in. I just tweaked the soil a little bit. I've been doing testing and actually found out I have almost perfect soil with my worm castings. But compost varies in different nutrients and stuff like that, such as calciums and things. I have my soil tested professionally. But with the worm castings, we're pretty well able to grow almost anything so far. So that's your soil mixture. I don't have it in my notes here too, but you could actually use this to make soil blocks if you don't know what those are, which don't take any plastic as well. But if you want to start seedlings, I've had great success starting seedlings with the exact same moisture. This is diversified across the board. That's why this thing is so significant. All right, so now that you got your soil, you got your baskets all woven, you got them all tied together, you got them lined with the burlap, you got them packed. I do recommend that you moisten the soil a little bit before you put them in your baskets. That way it keeps the dust and everything from flying around. Plus, you want to pack them a little bit and get as much in those baskets as possible. Reason why you want to pack it too is this soil is literally unpacked. You cannot compact it. You can squeeze it in your hand and it'll just keep crumbling. Even if you took it and just drove over it with a car in a pile, and you take your hands, you can still just break it up relatively easy. So I pack all of mine and have had no really bad trouble with root rots and stuff like that, but that's just something that I do. I consider it like a very large soil block. If you know anything about them, that's what I'm talking about there. So, all right. So now let's talk about the watering. We should definitely have a watering plan before we even plant. So you have 2 options here. You have one where you can get yourself a galvanized watering can, which I would recommend because that's totally biodegradable and it releases zinc. That's the same thing with the fencing, the wire fencing. There's zinc, but it's actually very minuscule and it actually is good for the soil and it's not harmful to us as human beings or animals or the microbiology and things as far as my knowledge goes. So that to me is the safe thing. Or get yourself a 5-gallon bucket, recycled if you can. That's good for the earth. Repurpose it. So you have the choice with a water hose. Oh my God, there's so much to share here. Definitely get yourself a food grade water hose, a drinking water hose that has NSF approval. You can find them at Walmart or RV stores. It's the white hoses that are used for RVs because just do yourself a favor, sniff the inside of a regular garden hose and see how bad it smells. So you can water by hand if you have the time. If you're at home, you're retired and all that, or you have disability, you're disabled. If you're working like me, you're probably going to want to set up some automation for this thing. So unfortunately, this is where the use of plastic comes, but the benefits outweigh, the negatives, I think. For under like $60, I think, if you had a 4x4 foot garden and you did my systems here, you can literally get yourself automated. You can get yourself a little timer that works off 2 AA batteries. It's very simple. You're going to hook this up to your water spout. You're going to put a backflow preventer, which is the thing that stops when the water starts shooting into your drip irrigation. It's going to want to have suction to go back, and it's going to possibly suck some debris and go into your plumbing. This is a backflow preventer, just stops it. It lets stuff go out, but it doesn't let stuff come back in. Next, what you're going to have is a water pressure regulator, and this is going to keep your PSI down to about 25 pounds for PSI, pounds per square inch. And what this is going to do is keep the the high water pressure from fluctuating and actually blowing the tips off your automated watering system or cracking the hose. So that goes in also to a coupling that will go into a 1/2-inch irrigation tubing. And this is usually black. It comes in brown. You're going to run this 1/2-inch tubing. This is like the diameter of a water hose. And you can get pre-made drip lines that are inside these 1/2-inch things. You can run 1 dripper per basket. What I recommend, and I'm giving you guys away my secret here, is that you're going to get the small 1/4-inch tubing. You're going to get the 1/2 gallon per minute. It's a brown. Its spacing is, oh my goodness, I believe it was every 6 inches. Yeah. So you're going to cut yourself an end off of this brown 1/4-inch drip irrigation tubing. You're going to cut yourself off about a foot. You want about 4 irrigation nodules, tips that are already completely embedded inside this 1/4-inch hosing. What you're going to do is you're going to make a loop out of this. You're going to crimp one end, and you're going to use a little piece of wire or zip tie or whatever you want to actually hold the hose from actually springing open and releasing the pressure. You want to lock it up somehow. They have little tips, little plugs you can insert at the end if you so chose to. I like to keep it open. I like to I make like a little lollipop piece of wire, of galvanized wire. I'll crimp the irrigation tubing, and I'll kind of pinch it into the side. That way I can pull it off this lollipop shaped secure clip, and I can open it up and I can drain all the water out to clean any debris and then clip it right back in, and this helps hold the end in. Okay, so as we move forward, we're going to take that 1/4-inch tubing and we're going to get a little L bracket, a little L barb fitting, and you're going to fit that into the brown irrigation tubing, and then you're going to cut yourself about another foot of some black 1/4-inch poly tubing, and you're going to hook that up to the L-shaped barbed fitting. So now you have the circle, this long circle with 4 emitters on it, and now you got this long 1-foot black tubing that's connected to that circular one, the brown dripper irrigation. What you're going to want to do, what I like to do, is cut the center of the black 1/4-inch tubing in half and put yourself a little on-off shut-off valve in there. They're very cheap. You can buy them on Amazon and things like that, pretty inexpensive. And this gives you the ability, if you're not using that basket, to not waste water, because here in San Diego it's very expensive, to actually shut just that one basket off and keep all the rest. Say you had a 4x4 foot garden, that's 16 containers that you're growing in. One happens to not be producing, you can just shut that valve off. A little expensive at first, but when you're working as hard as I am and you want to save money on water and things like that, it comes really in handy. So you got that valve in the center. Last one is just a 1/4-inch straight valve. It's got 2 male ends on the end. You're going to shove that into the black 1/4-inch tubing, and then you're going to get yourself a hole puncher. You're going to punch into the 1/2-inch tubing, make yourself a hole, and insert your entire drip irrigation line into that 1/2-inch tubing there. The pipes. I know I'm throwing numbers here. It's probably hard to understand, but if you can look at videos of these setups here, or watch my videos, you can see exactly what it is that I mean. So yeah, these things are pretty simple. I forgot to mention here that when you're cutting your baskets, you're going to have excess off the corners, right? We're going to cut that red emblem, the red cross. Well, all those little pieces in there, you're going to have these little squares that you can cut out. That's going to be a 2-inch wide by 4-inch long fork. You can separate these things instead of throwing them in the garbage, and what you have is like a U shape that has 4-inch long lengths with a 2-inch little bridge along the top. You're going to take these, and when you wrap your coil of water around the basket, on top of the burlap, by the way, you're going to pin these things down to the soil so that the irrigation tube doesn't vibrate away from the basket. Now you have these 4 emitters, and you have plenty of water to get your plant started. Okay, so Now we have the water done. The dummy-proof planting grids, again, is from Mel Bartholomew's Square Foot Gardening. Because we had that perfect square, 1 foot by 1 foot square, now you can go into your soil and you can draw yourself a cross right around a plus sign right down the center. You're going to take your finger and poke it into each square, the dead center, and this is going to allow you to grow 4 plants. If you're going to do such things as lettuce, you know that you don't want to do more than 4 plants. You have a grid where you literally poke the soil, drop a seed, or maybe cut the top of your burlap just perfectly on this grid type that I'm telling you about, and drop your seeds in there, cover them with a little bit of vermiculite right next to the drippers, and they will propagate into plants. It's the last time you're ever going to have to touch this thing until you need to actually harvest. Weeding is really not much of a thing at all, if any, because you started off with healthy, great soil. And there's just so much to talk about this. I can't even fit it all in. So yeah, there's many grids that you can do. You can, if you want to grow a tomato, you just poke it dead center inside this 1 foot by 1 foot 1 by 1 foot basket. And in the center, you just plant yourself your cucumber, your tomato, eggplant, whatever you got that requires 1 square foot. So we can literally take these things, which I'm going to ask permission from Square Foot Gardening, if I can utilize those plant grids. You can find them online for free. Just look up Square Foot Gardening planting grids. The other one you can do is a tic-tac-toe. You can take 2 fingers and you're going to make a tic-tac-toe on this 1 by 1 foot square basket on the surface space. That's going to give you 9 plants. Again, you poke a hole in the center, dead center of each basket, and that gives you 9 plants. So if you wanted to do something, say, like arugula, you can put 9 in it, and you learn from the grid. There's 1 tomato per basket. There's 4 heads of lettuce per basket. There's 9 arugulas. You know the grid and how everything matches up. So perfectly dummy-proof planting grids. You don't even need to think. You could have a chart, everything, the soil, everything's automated and watered, and you're good to go, and you begin gardening and growing food with the least amount of effort. So let's talk about the return on investments to close this off, is that your soil you're going to have for a good decade. This mixture that I'm telling you here, especially with the worm castings, everything starts to get better and ages like wine. Microbiology is going to start to build up from the worm castings. It's not going to compact. I'm not sure how long it will grow. I've only been doing this for 3 years, but we're getting to that point now where things are starting to look better and better and better. This is an investment where you own the soil, not the land. If you are renting, if you're growing for free like I am on other people's land, why would I want to go develop their soil? And if they kick me off, all that work and amendments and everything I did stays on their property. This, as I look at a strategy for life, if you could do this in business and everything else, I own the soil. I own the best soil that's on the planet, the most that plants thrive in. And I get to take it with me wherever I go. So as far as an investment, I see as being, if you're middle class or poor, or you don't know where to put your money, invest into the biodegradable container gardening. It's going to feed you for many, many years. I don't know how long the wire baskets are actually going to last. It's called biodegradable container gardening for a reason. The burlap, though, I've had the same things growing in them for about a year now. When we look at contrast to the root pouches and stuff that they call them, the grow bags that are made out of recycled woven plastic, which what happens with woven plastic? It starts to degrade and turns into powder. Now you have powder plastic all over everything. It's not quite that's what drove me to do what I'm doing. But the inserts are 60 cents a piece every time you go as of right now. That's a small investment. The root pouches, the grow bags, are about $4 to $3.80 per pouch. Whereas with the fencing, all said and done, your fencing is at this point right now is about, I think it was $1.20 for the fencing, for the wire to make each basket. It's also 60 cents for the insert, so you're about, what is that? You're $1.20 in for the major part. If you're hand watering, you're done. Your burlap is going to be 60 cents every time you replace your grow medium. When you mix up your soil, say you grow a tomato and it dies, it gave all its fruit, you chop it off, you discard the top, you get rid of the roots, remix that soil, add in a little bit more worm compost or just compost in general, reline your basket with the burlap, and pack it with soil again and grow your next growth. Every time you're growing something, I'm going to say it's probably with seeds and everything, you're probably looking at about like $2 investment for a tomato. And the amount of pounds that you can get off a tomato growing in my ways, I found that I got probably about, I'd say 18 pounds of tomatoes. And if we take a look at that, if you look at organic tomatoes, especially here in California, they're about, for heirloom and natural organic tomatoes, they're about $3 to $4 a pound. 20 times 4, you do the math. Return on investment is pretty huge. Now, I think you'll have this thing, like it says, the soil and everything for at least 10 years. The basket's probably at least, I'd say, 10 years. I have rusted out ones that are still functioning. And you guys, you're investing the ROI in yourself to eat that healthy food and to give you that experience so that if you do want to grow in the ground one day, you now have seeds and you now have the know-how. And yeah, a lot of this stuff could be done for free. It could be recycled, repurposed, such as the pallets, the cinder blocks you could find online. It's not much of an investment, and I'm so excited to get this thing started. I just wanted to kind of share with you guys what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and what you guys can expect in the coming future. Please ask me any questions. The email is down below, and I will put a link down to the biodegradable container gardening, if I remember here, so that you guys can go check it out yourself. So it's biodegradable container gardening. Guys, I am out. If I brought you any value, please like, subscribe, share this. Help me get this show off the ground. And hopefully the biodegradable container gardening, I think it's going to help improve the world into a better place and feed people at the same time. So yeah, as I always say, guys, go out there and have yourself a near-life experience. Don't lose your muchness. Carry on the fire and human up, my friends.